Welcome. Today we're going to be taking a look at Dominant Species. This is a 2 to 6 player area control worker placement 4X game where you take the role of one of 6 animal classes in the year 90,000 BC, and the Ice Age is vastly approaching. So you'll be adapting, migrating, and propagating your way to become the most dominant species. How do you become the most dominant species and win the game? By having the most victory points at the end of the final round. And the final round is triggered by an Ice Age card being revealed. Now that we know what the winning condition is, let's take a look at the components, setup, and how a round and phase work in Dominant Species. Now let's take a look at the components for Dominant Species. We're going to start with the main game board that is in the center of the table. Now we're going to take a look at the tiles. We're going to start with the earth tiles. You have your forest tiles, your mountain tiles, your wetland tiles, your sea tiles, your jungle tiles, your desert tiles, and your savanna tiles. And then finally we have the tundra tiles. Now we're going to take a look at the cards. There are 2 types, your dominance cards and your survival card. Now let's take a look at the element tokens. You have grass tokens, grub tokens, meat tokens, seed tokens, sun tokens, and water tokens. Then we have a cloth bag, which you'll put your elements. Now we have the player components. You have your class board and the matching initiative marker. You have your species cubes, your dominance cones, and your action pawn cylinders. Now let's look at the setup for Dominant Species. We're going to be setting this up for a 4-player game, which takes 12 steps. Step number 1 is to place your main game board in the center of your table. Step number 2 is to choose an animal and get that animal's initiative marker. Step number 3 is to take your initiative markers and place them in the initiative track in reverse food chain order. So insects would go first and mammals would go last. Step number 4 is to choose a color, and based on the number of players, so for a 4-player game we're going to collect 10 cones, 5 action pawn cylinders, and 45 species cubes for each player in their player color. Now out of the 45 species cubes that you get in your player color, you're going to take one of your species cubes and place it on the victory point track at 0. Step number 5 is to place your starting earth and tundra tiles just as they are depicted on the main game board. Step number 6 is to stack the remaining tundra tiles and place them in the glaciation tile location. Step number 7 is to shuffle and stack face down the remaining earth tiles and place them in 3 equal stacks in the Wanderlust tile location at the bottom right of the board. Then you're going to flip over the top earth tile in each stack. Step number 8, you are going to separate, shuffle, and stack your cards. You are going to set your survival card, which is your blue backed card, to the side. Then you are going to pull out your Ice Age card and then shuffle the remaining cards. Once you shuffled the cards, you're going to put the Ice Age card on the bottom and then place them on the right side of the board. Step number 9 is to draw 5 of your dominance cards and place them face up in the available dominance cards location. Step number 10, you're going to place your starting elements on the locations that are depicted on the main game board. Step number 11, you're going to draw 4 random elements for each gray box next to the abundance, adaption, and wanderlust spots on the right side of the board. Step number 12 is to place your starting species cubes and dominance cones on the main game board in their depicted locations. Now let's look at how a round and phase work in dominant species. Each round consists of 3 phases: the planning phase, the execution phase, and the reset phase. Phase number 1 is the planning phase. This is where players in initiative order, left to right, place 1 action pawn cylinder on any available circular eye space in the action display. Placement will continue in initiative order until all action pawn cylinders are placed. Phase 2 is the execution phase. This is where action pawn cylinders are removed and those actions are taken in order from top to bottom, left to right on the action display on the right side of the game board. These actions are voluntary, so you do not have to take your action when you're removing your action pawn. Now let's take a look at each of the 12 action locations that you can place your action pawn cylinders. The first type of action is the initiative action. This is next to the initiative markers. For this action, you'll move your initiative marker to the left 1 space, allowing you to choose earlier in the planning phase. Once you perform this action, you'll move that action pawn cylinder to any vacant location in the action display. The second action is adaptation. This will allow you to choose 1 element to place on your animal display. The third type of action is regression. This saves elements on your player board because any element in regression causes every player to lose 1 of that particular element from his player board. The fourth type of action is abundance. This allows you to choose 1 element to play on any vacant earth tile corner. Action number 5 is the wasteland action. This saves an element from being removed from the tundra tiles. Action number 6 is the depletion action. This is where you choose an element type in this box to remove 1 of those elements from any earth tile. Action number 7 is the glaciation action. Only once per round can you take this action. You are going to take a tundra tile, choose a location next to an already existing tundra tile, and place it. If, by placing this tundra tile, one of the element tiles is surrounded by nothing but tundra tiles, you would remove it. Then you would gain victory point bonus based on the number of adjacent tundra tiles. The bonus point track is what you would use to figure out how many victory points you would gain. Then you would remove all but 1 species cube for each animal, and those removed would go back to their animal gene pool. The 8th type of action is the speciation action. This is where you're going to be choosing an earth tile that has 1 of the element types that you chose with your action pawn cylinder, and then you're going to be placing a number of species cubes based on that earth tile. Action number 9 is the Wanderlust action. This is where you're going to be choosing a face-up earth tile, placing it next to an existing earth tile on the main game board, and then you may choose 1 of the element tiles to place on any vacant corner on that new tile. Then you're going to gain bonus victory points based on the number of surrounding earth tiles from the newly placed tile, using the bonus points table in the bottom left corner of the game board. Then in food chain order, so starting with mammals, players can move any number of species from adjacent locations onto the new earth tile. Action number 10 is the migration action. You may move up to the selected number of species to adjacent locations. Action number 11 is the competition action. In up to the 3 locations indicated by the action pawn cylinder, you may remove 1 opponent species cube from those locations. They have to have at least 1 of your species and 1 opponent species on that earth tile. When you remove these cubes, they are removed from the game. And then finally, the 12th type of action is the domination action. This will allow you to score a tile. The tile scoring is in the left side of the game board based on the type of earth tile. They're scored by the most species cubes on the tile. The most species cubes gets the most victory points when scoring a tile. Ties go in food chain order. If there is dominance on the earth tile being scored, that player gets to choose and play one of the face-up dominance cards. Now let's take a look at how to determine dominance. First, you have to have at least one species cube on the earth tile. Then you calculate elements on your board and earth tiles. So for each element on your player board, you would count how many of that specific type are on the earth tile. So if we're looking at the forest tile, you have 2 seeds and 2 seeds. So that's a total of 4, and that is why the birds have dominance in the forest. If you look at the amphibians, in the wetland they have dominance because there are 2 for each one of their 3 water elements, making 6 total for that particular tile. Now let's look at endangered species. When all of an animal class's elements have been removed from a particular earth tile, then if they have dominance, it would be removed, and those species cubes are in danger of elimination. They would be considered endangered species. So if the birds had any species cubes in the desert, because there are no seed element tiles, they would be considered endangered species in that desert. That brings us to phase number 3, the reset phase. There are 3 things that take place during the reset phase. The first is extinction. You are going to eliminate all endangered species cubes out of play. The second is survival. The most species cubes on the tundra tiles gets the survival card and scores bonus victory points based on the number of tundra tiles that they occupy. The number of bonus points they'll gain is located in the bonus points table in the bottom left corner of the board. The third is to reseed. This is where you're going to refill the available dominance cards. You're going to slide the glaciation action pawns to the left. You are going to remove the element tiles from your regression box, your depletion box, and the wanderlust. Then you're going to slide the wasteland to the depletion, the abundance to the wasteland, the adaptation to the regression. And then just like in game setup, you are going to draw 4 new element tiles for the adaptation, abundance, and wanderlust locations. And then lastly, you're going to flip the top of each of the earth tile stacks if they were used and it was face down. If one particular stack of earth tiles is depleted during the game, that would limit the number of wanderlust actions that you could have during a round. Then we're ready to begin the second round of the game, and then rounds would continue on until the Ice Age is revealed. When the Ice Age card is revealed, you are going to finish the remainder of the domination actions if you have any left, and then perform the extinction and survival actions in the reset phase. Then you will perform the final scoring. Then you're going to remove all the domination markers from the earth tiles and score each and every earth tile one last time. Once the final scoring is complete, the player and species with the highest victory point total wins the game and is the most dominant species.